Good evening, my Nightside tribe. This is Sunny from Muse Media, and this is the Daily Dozen with 12 developments from around the world worthy of your eclectic attention. Tonight, what's on the lineup? We have a fake bear with a criminal record, a supervolcano that's getting its wiring diagram reconstructed, a star old enough to remember the first chapters of the universe, an ozone loophole nobody wanted, a king who may never have existed, a colony that may not have vanished so much as just adapted, toilets with great ambitions, butterflies that have memory, meteors over midnight, Florida zombies with good posture, a haunted cartoon statue meeting an unceremonious end, and a radio legend finding its way home. Let's jump in. We begin tonight in California, where nature, luxury, branding, and criminal decision-making met at one of the dumbest crossroads in modern law enforcement. Authorities say that 3 people were sentenced after staging fake bear attacks on a 2010 Rolls-Royce Ghost, along with 2 other Mercedes, using bear costumes, all in an effort to collect nearly $142,000 in fraudulent insurance claims. Investigators dubbed it Operation Bear Claw, and a wildlife biologist reportedly looked at the video and concluded that this was no bear. This was a person in a costume. The group received probation, a weekend jail program, and at least 2 were ordered to pay more than $50,000 in restitution, which means somewhere in California evidence storage, there is now a bear suit that lost a court case. From fake wildlife to the real thing beneath our feet, let's head now to Yellowstone, where scientists are revising their map of the monster underground. A new science paper led by researchers from the Chinese Academy of Sciences argues that Yellowstone's volcanic system is not fed by one neat, villainous vat of molten doom, but by a broad trans-lithospheric magma plumbing system, a network of magma mush, partially molten rock rising through the lithosphere from the upper mantle. In plain English, the supervolcano's engine looks more diffuse and more complicated than the old cartoon version did. That changes how scientists think about the long-term volcanic behavior, but it does not mean Yellowstone is about to blow. The USGS Yellowstone Volcano Observatory says the caldera remains at normal alert status and that activity is still at background levels. So, not this time. This is not the apocalypse yet. This is geology doing what geology does best, being vast, old, and inconveniently subtle. But there will come a day. And from restless earth to the ancient sky, astronomers may have found one of the oldest surviving family echoes in the universe. Researchers studying SDSS J0715-7334 say it is the most chemically primitive known star yet found, so poor in heavy elements that it likely formed from gas enriched by one of the universe's first-generation population 3 stars. Its orbit suggests it came from the large Magellanic Cloud, which is why scientists have called it an ancient immigrant. The why here is beautiful. The first stars are long gone. They lived fast and they died hard. And they left only fingerprints in the chemistry of what came after. So when astronomers find a star like this, they're not finding the gods, so to speak. They are finding one of their descendants, still carrying the family resemblance. Now let's come back down to Earth, where one of humanity's genuine environmental success stories turns out to have a little unfinished business. A new MIT-led study warns that leaks from still allowed industrial feedstock uses of ozone-depleting chemicals could delay ozone recovery by about 7 years if current leakage rates continue. The key point here is not that the Montreal Protocol failed, far from it. It remains one of the most effective environmental treaties ever signed. The problem is that a narrow exemption, originally thought to be low risk, appears to be leaking more than expected. Oh, go figure. So the larger lesson is one we keep learning over again in every field. Success does not eliminate maintenance. You do not save the world once. You keep saving it. You save it, and then keep checking for the fine print. And now, since we've dealt with volcanoes, chemistry, and the dawn of the cosmos, let's do something simple for a moment, like asking whether King Arthur ever really existed? A fresh feature revisiting the question says the honest answer remains. Scholars still do not agree. Some historians argue Arthur was likely a later literary creation stitched together in the 9th century from earlier war traditions. But others believe there may have been a real post-Roman war leader somewhere beneath that legend, later buried under Camelot, the Grail, and all the romance that followed. And perhaps that is fitting. Some figures never quite settle into either history or myth. They remain suspended there, like a sword in a stone, because a culture still wants them. But where there's smoke. Speaking of history refusing to stay settled, another old mystery may be inching its way from legend and back toward ordinary human survival. The strongest current evidence on Roanoke suggests the so-called lost colony did not simply vanish, but likely split up. Archaeological work tied to Site X and Site Y in Bertie County, Elizabethan-era artifacts consistent with inland movement, while recent attention to finds on Hatteras Island, once known as Croatoan, strengthens the idea that some colonists may have joined native communities there. That does not fully solve the mystery, and DNA has not closed the case, but it makes the old image of a colony disappearing into thin air look less and less likely. More and more, however, Roanoke resembles what history usually turns out to be: frightened people making difficult choices and hoping they survive them. All right. From vanished colonists to the future of health tracking may be in your toilet. A new trend piece out of this week looks at products from Withings Throne and Coiler Health that analyze urine and stool for hydration, gut health, and bathroom pattern data. Some, I'm afraid a lot of us think we don't want people knowing those things, but some rely on cartridges and urine analysis, some use optical sensors, and some use a downward, facing camera and microphone aimed into the bowl. While emphasizing that no anatomy is being recorded, I would have to wonder about that sometimes, which is exactly the sort of reassurance that tells you we've crossed into a whole new technological age. The why is obvious enough. Of course, there's absolutely amazing, wonderful, practical aspects to this. Urine and stool have always carried very useful health clues. What has changed is our willingness to turn every quiet corner of our life into a dashboard. Wearables were apparently only the beginning. Now let's cleanse the palate with something gentler and, in its own way, far more astonishing. Butterflies, memory, and a child asking questions most adults would have been too nervous to ask. A young researcher, Joe Nagy, is drawing scientific attention for butterfly experiments suggesting that learned responses may persist through metamorphosis, and perhaps even into later generations. The broader idea that some insect learning can survive metamorphosis, that's not new. Martha Weiss demonstrated that in moths years ago. What is new is Joe's work with swallowtails and the fact that established scientists are taking it seriously enough to present and discuss it publicly with him. The transgenerational angle still looks preliminary, so that part needs caution, but the story itself is wonderful. Every now and then, science is advanced by someone young enough not to know which question they're supposed to leave alone. And for me personally, I believe that we have some genetic makeup inside of our being that has yet to be thoroughly discovered, where we are going to find in the future that we do inherit our ancestors' memories. Just wait and see. It may not be our lifetime, but I bet in our children's lifetime, we'll see. Oh, let's step outside for a moment. Follow me. The Lyrid meteor shower is active now and expected to peak Tuesday night into Wednesday morning with around 10 to 20 meteors per hour if you have really good dark sky conditions. This year helps things along because the crescent moon will set before the best viewing begins. The Lyrids are tied to debris from the comet Thatcher and are among the oldest recorded meteor showers in history, with observations stretching back more than 2,000 years. And that is part of their charm. A meteor shower is one of the few sky events that still feels like a message, not because it means anything supernatural, but because it reminds you in one clean, bright line that the universe is not all static. Back to Earth now, and specifically to Florida, once again, where community spirit has apparently joined forces with the undead. A group in the famous Villages called the Thrillagers, I love that, says it is an official resident lifestyle group offering class where members can learn and practice Thriller and other dances in a safe, welcoming environment, with performances planned around the villages and nearby communities. Their own values are admirably direct. Let's have fun, fitness, friendship, and respect. Which means somewhere in Central Florida right now, a disciplined company of retirees is very likely perfecting zombie choreography with more commitment than most people bring to their taxes. And good for them. One of the healthiest signs in a civilization is that somewhere somebody is still willing to be ridiculous in public for joy. But I've got a link. I'm going to put it in the description. You should watch these gals go. I am so impressed. Someday, I'm telling you folks, someday I'm going to be in the Villages. And since we're already in a mood for folklore, costumes, and strange public behavior, here's one from Mexico. According to Coast AM's summary of local reporting, a long-time urban legend came to an abrupt end when a young man accidentally toppled and destroyed a Dopey statue in a public park. A statue that locals had long whispered was somehow possessed or prone to eerie behavior at night. I am presenting that exactly as folklore because that is what it is. But folklore, well, folklore, it just hangs in there. Every town has its object, its corner, its odd little thing people half joke about and half avoid. The interesting part is rarely whether the statue was really haunted. The interesting part is that people wanted it to be. And now, like many local legends, it has died the least magical death imaginable, by accident. And now for our closer tonight, something warmer. A story for anyone who has ever loved radio, local television, or the peculiar comfort of a familiar signal. The famous WKRP call letters, long held by broadcaster D.P. McIntyre and his North Carolina operation, are reportedly headed to Cincinnati for a real radio station. Yay! McIntyre says he cannot yet name the buyer or the exact timing, but he says the deal is done and that WKRP is coming home. Oh, that is almost just too perfect. A fictional station born in a sitcom absurdity, loved for decades by people who understood radio as both chaos and companionship, may now become real in the city that gave it its legend. And if that doesn't sound like radio, I don't know what does. Sometimes an old signal doesn't disappear. Sometimes it just takes the scenic route home. So tonight, I am so happy to say, welcome home, WKRP in Cincinnati. And that's not a bad night's work. Until next time, you keep watching the skies, question the obvious, and keep a little room in your mind for the strange things that turn out to be true. Follow the signals and question the noise. And I'll see you on the night side.